Culturally, we've all kind of checked out on Star Wars, right? The sheer amount of Star Wars released over the last decade is an issue. At its best, it's been polarizing. At its worst, it's just been meh. Now, I really didn't hate the new movies, like, remotely. Force Awakens was fun. Last Jedi and Rogue One were, like, the only movies, in my opinion, of the new batch to really take the themes of Star Wars seriously. Solo was a movie, and Rise of Skywalker was just not it. It's the only Star Wars movie where I straight up did not have a good time. But, like, when I see people rail against the sequels on some "it's the worst movie I've ever seen" ish, I just check out and simply assume that they haven't watched a lot of movies, because Rise of Skywalker wasn't even the worst movie I saw the December it released. Shout out to Cats, or whatever the opposite of a shout out is. While we haven't gotten any new movies since 2019, that sure hasn't stopped the glut of Star Wars shows. Mando, Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Andor, Bad Batch, Visions, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, that one Resistance show we all kind of ignored, except the one guy in the comments who's gonna go, "Actually, I watched it." And to that guy I say, let me know if it's worth watching. If I was a betting man, I'd wager that most of us truly fell off after Obi-Wan. Mando Season 2 was a bomb post-Rise of Skywalker, but all that goodwill was shot out the airlock with the back-to-back duds of Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. Two ideas that on paper I really wanted, but in execution just left me out here like... Do I even like Star Wars anymore? As a result of pivoting to Star Wars content for the month, I learned that the answer to that question is no. I don't like Star Wars. I f***ing love it. So today, I'm going to take you on my personal journey from being burnt out on Star Wars to rediscovering my love for it. But before we get into it, some housekeeping. If you're new here, which according to my analytics, you most likely are, this is a movie channel. I examine how changes in the business of film has affected the quality of the storytelling, and really gush about stories I love and crack some jokes in the process. If you dig the vibe, please leave a like and subscribe. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the Clone Wars. When the final season dropped back in 2020, I was a busy bee. I was wrapping up work at my desk job while my work as a burgeoning journalist at The Root ramped up. It was one of those things that fell between the cracks, especially as I was feeling cool on the wars in the wake of Rise of Skywalker. I kept saying I was going to rewatch the Clone Wars before starting the final season, but after 4 years of dealing with the occasionally thrilling, often crushing realities of adult life, I decided I was going to ring in May the 4th this year by finally watching the final season of Clone Wars and catching Phantom Menace in theaters. So with the final season of the Clone Wars, I generally enjoyed the first two arcs, the dumbass Martez sisters notwithstanding, but y'all, those final 4 episodes. I'm not gonna spoil it in the event you're like me and I've been putting it off for years now, but stylistically, the final 4 episodes announce their arrival in a way that immediately makes you perk up. The final arc takes place concurrently with Revenge of the Sith, and dear lord, Filoni and crew stuck the landing, dropped the mic, and made an ending so good.
Make you wanna slap your mama! Yeah, boy! Hey, mama!
What the hell you want with...
As I watched the final arc of the Clone Wars and witnessed how the events of Revenge of the Sith reverberated across the galaxy, I felt this feeling slowly kindling in my gut, as though the fire of a dying age was once more rising. Star Wars was making me feel something again. When I got to those beautifully tragic final moments and the credits rolled, I sat on the couch in stunned silence, and a realization hit me like I finally remembered why I walked into my room after the 5th time. Good-ass Star Wars is one of my all-time favorite things, and it forever will be. After finishing Clone Wars, I was more excited to watch Phantom Menace in theaters that weekend. When Saturday finally arrived, me and my best bud crushed some tall boys, cause dirtbag hours, and headed to a galaxy far, far away. This was the first time I rewatched Phantom Menace in some years, and the first time seeing it in theaters since the 3D re-release 12 years ago. I can't believe it's been 12 years, but I honestly had a much stronger appreciation of the movie as an adult. I honestly think it's the second most visually satisfying Star Wars movie behind only Empire. It's a treat to look at the entire time, especially on the big screen. Lucas's dialogue isn't exactly rousing, but the movie is funnier than I remember it being, and with the Clone Wars fresh in my mind, I had more of an appreciation for Senator Palpatine's subtle power moves. The sound design for the pod racing sequence smacks in a movie theater, and I was cheesing like I was 7 years old again when Duel of the Fates hit. Also, Palpatine being at Qui-Gon's funeral watching the man burn really had me like, so for him, is this like the Sith equivalent of a Klan rally? After Phantom Menace, it was clear to me that I wasn't stopping here. I was gladly falling down the Star Wars rabbit hole once again. During this time, I had also been reading Timothy Zahn's original Thrawn trilogy. As a kid, I never read it because, being a dumb, piss-brained baby, I correlated old books with boring books because all the old books we read in class were boring. I don't like, you see, give me this cover art, I'm just gonna assume, yeah, it's not for me. But after finishing the series, it left me wondering why they threw all the EU out of canon, because I think that the Thrawn trilogy establishes some interesting threads that the sequels did kind of pick up on. I think if more folks read the books, or were at least told they counted, Rey and Kylo being Jaina and Jacen Solo would have been a far more interesting and emotionally charged dynamic, as well as a better introduction of the Force Dyad concept. Essentially, the sequels could have been a remixed version of the events in the Legacy of the Force books. As someone who enjoyed those books, I would have been totally fine if they were moved to Legends to make way for the sequels. Sometimes you gotta sacrifice for the greater good, and I'd have been willing to make that sacrifice. The second reason I think the Thrawn trilogy should have stayed canon would have been giving stronger narrative context for Luke Skywalker's journey in the sequels, and particularly his momentary lapse of judgment in considering killing Kylo Ren. I personally never understood the vitriol around Luke's betrayal in TLJ because Luke is a man, not a symbol, and men fail all the damn time. Obi-Wan failed. Yoda's an alien, but he failed, and both of them fucked off to some backwater planet when they did. You can almost say he's just following the example set by his teachers. And the deeper I got into the different eras of Star Wars, the less I've seen the Jedi as unfailing or even beyond moral reproach, because, like, Jedis go bad all the time, being Count Dooku was a Jedi, and he honestly spit some bars on the moral hypocrisy of the Jedi when he said the Jedi cannot help the slaves, but they can help the slave masters, which is a bar. And when Qui-Gon straight up tells Shmi,
I didn't actually come here to free slaves.
you kind of see the point happen in real time. One thing Heir to the Empire does well is establish that Luke Skywalker is a wartime Jedi trained by a wartime Jedi. He's unconfident in his abilities to be a Jedi teacher and fears having the same thing that happened to Obi-Wan happening to him, one of his pupils being seduced by the dark side, which, spoilers for Legacy of the Force and the sequel trilogy, it happens. The books establish this fear off rip. In my opinion, The Last Jedi did a good job tackling that thread. I think a big problem with the sequels is that so much time had passed between Jedi and Force Awakens with very little of the new canon diving into what happened to Han, Luke, and Leia during those 40 years. I just think that for the sake of both the filmmakers and the audience, keeping some of the OG EU canon would have helped fill in the blanks and given the new stories a stronger leg to stand on. But I digress. What happened. It's time to talk about Darth Vader. The man is one of the most iconic villains in the history of storytelling. Even people who don't know a lick about the wars know this nigga right here. So telling a singular Darth Vader story is a daunting task for any writer. But Kieran Gillen ain't just any writer. If you were not aware, Gillen is a beast with the pen. He's got the best Young Avengers run, wrote AXE Judgment Day, the only crossover that goes toe-to-toe with Secret Wars 2015 in my humble opinion, and has delivered 2 separate X-Men runs that were both bangers for different reasons. The man don't know how to miss, and he comes through with an absolute banger in his 5-volume run on Darth Vader. The thing this book does so damn well is synthesizing Anakin Skywalker with Darth Vader. It's one of the few Vader portrayals entirely informed by the events of the prequels. Imagine a comic with all the good Vader stuff from Obi-Wan, none of the mid, and you get Darth Vader. It focuses on Vader's tragic nature while also doubling down on him being an Omega-level Force user. The book constantly has you going between, "Aw, goddamn," and "Oh, god damn!" By virtue of taking place between A New Hope and Empire, the plot points aren't massive when it comes to the Galactic Civil War. Instead, Gillen goes deeper into the psyche of Darth Vader and creates what I believe is one of his most badass and definitely most psychologically interesting depiction. The book is all about Darth Vader living with, and to some degree being haunted by, Anakin Skywalker's actions. Each prequel callback or visual reference breaks your damn heart, and almost makes you feel sympathy for Vader until he's like, "I'm just gonna kill an entire battlefield of rebel scum, just to remind y'all I'm him." It also introduces some cool new memorable characters, most notably Dr. Aphra in 000, who's a sadistic, murderous take on C-3PO, which is just as wild as it sounds. Dr. Aphra can only be described as a charming scumbag. She's 10 toes down for Vader and the Empire, but as the book goes on, you understand why she is the way she is. There's also this cool Inspector character whose name I'm blanking on, but he's basically like Space Columbo. He had such a unique tension to the story, and I really couldn't predict how his part of the story was going to play out. When his arc hits the climax, it's one of the most fascinating reveal sequences of the book. Honestly, this is the kind of storytelling I want from the Star Wars shows. If we're gonna wheel out the old characters, I want to learn something new about them. See them in a new light. With Darth Vader, I got this missing link that helped fully synchronize the characters of Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. If you want more Anakin-centric storytelling, Darth Vader is where it's at. If you don't feel like spending a butt ton of money on the trade, just do what I did and go to your local library. Libraries. They're great! And you know what else is great? Star Wars. I am so dang bored listening to folks argue and complain about the sequels and Disney and blah blah blah. I don't know about you, but Disney can't kill my childhood because it already died the moment I had to pay taxes to a government I don't respect. Disney cannot ruin Star Wars because Star Wars is so much bigger than them. Why y'all acting like Star Wars hasn't been disappointing before? It ain't a new phenomenon, and not all of the new stuff has been bad. Without the new era, we wouldn't have had Rogue One or Andor, 2 of the best Star Wars stories ever told. And even if you're dismayed by what they've done with the Disney Plus shows and movies, there are still so many bangers across film, comics, animation, books, and games. Why focus on the mid when there was so much heat? Me and my buds all made characters in the Old Republic just to see how the free-to-play version works, and we've been having a blast creating our own Star Wars story with each other. I've revisited the games I love, like Republic Commando and the OG Battlefront 2, and I mean the OG, not whatever that excuse of a collection Aspyr put out was. I finally started some old games I never played, like KOTOR 2. Yes, with the content restoration mod, don't you worry. The point is, Star Wars is dope. And I'm not gonna let a couple mediocre shows and a piss poor movie cloud the fact that there are more cool Star Wars stories than bad ones. I love this world, and I refuse to let corporate mediocrity make me forget that. So, that's my spiel. I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you.